Hey guys, in this video I'm going to discuss what INFJ ambition looks like and how to kind of spot it, but also if you know an INFJ or if you're friends with an INFJ and you kind of want to get more perspective on how that looks. So if you are an INFJ or if you know an INFJ, ambition is a very interesting relationship when it comes to our personality type as INFJs, because our functions, and again, I'm going to speak in Myers-Briggs terms, but if we are thinking in Myers-Briggs terms, our functions are: we lead with introverted intuition, NI. Our secondary function is extroverted feeling, FE. Our tertiary function is introverted thinking, TI. Almost flipped you guys off, but I did it. And then our fourth function is extroverted sensing, SE. So this is a very interesting stacking in general for a person. And that's why you see statistics saying that INFJs are the rarest type, or at least one of the rarest types. As of now, it is considered the rarest type. I personally don't like to kind of look into that type of those types of statistics just because something is rare. In all reality, even if it is the 2% of the people in the world, that's still millions of people. That's still a lot of people. So that being said, if that is the case, there are less people that have this personality type, so that kind of combination of cognitive functions in that specific order look a little bit bizarre for the outside world. And so INFJs are going to have quite a struggle fitting in and really feeling like, not even fitting in, because actually they have a really good ability to fit in, but having an issue really finding their flock of people when they're younger, especially because INFJs tend to be a lot more reserved in nature. And I think, personally for me, I think the best way to start determining someone's type is to really look at their childhood and how they were as children. And so stereotypically, and just again, because of the nature of an INFJ children are going to come across a lot more reserved in nature. They're also going to be very sensitive, very attuned to other people's emotions, especially because when you are at a young age, you're going to have that NI be very dominant. And also the FE is also being expressed as well. And this also kind of gets into the concept of nature versus nurture. Obviously, if any personality grows up in a environment where they are not allowed to really truly be themselves, then that person's natural personality is not going to necessarily reflect the stereotype that, or maybe even the most cookie cutter representation of that personality type is going to look a bit different. And so to kind of put this in perspective, if an INFJ grows up in a household that is very TE leaning, so people that value extroverted thinking over introverted thinking, again, kind of that FE-FI divide. So again, INFJs value FE, and people that have TE or value TE, they're going to value FI. So that kind of household is not going to turn out the same type of INFJ. Again, on the surface, at the core, they are the same person. Again, everybody's different, but at the core, they have the same cognitive functions. So not the same person, but the same cognitive functions. But the way it's reflected is going to look a bit different. It's the concept, again, of nature and nurture. Their nurture is going to make them seem a bit different. But kind of going back to that childlike persona, if they grow up in a household, regardless of what their parents are, but they grow up in a household that is a fairly healthy household. Everybody has unhealthy things that happen in their life. People go through divorce. Maybe there's some type of bullying that they deal with in school, or some type of separation, deaths, different things that people go through. And these are just human things that everyone goes through at some point in their life. And you may not always go through a divorce, but you're always going to encounter death at some point. So there's going to be these traumatic things. But if they have a fairly stable household and they are able to really kind of express themselves to the fullest extent, then they are going to have maybe that more cookie cutter persona of what an INFJ looks like. So that being said, as a child, just in general, no matter what their nurture looks like, but again, nurture can kind of sway the way this is perceived. INFJs are going to be a lot more reserved as children. And from my experience as an INFJ, but also speaking with other INFJs and just knowing how the functions interact with one another, INFJs have a tendency, especially again when they're not as secure with their other functions and they're still developing and they're still these children, they are going to look so much more shy than they are in reality. I would say that INFJs, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, but INFJs have this duality about them, and every single personality has this, where they have a hidden ESTP inside of them. So they are going to have this other side of them, and again, that's not going to always be expressed, but they have that extroverted sensing, that introverted thinking inside of them, and it expresses in different ways. So for example, when I was in school as a child, I was very quiet and I got along with other children, and I tended to have quite a few friends, or people tended to like me when I was quite young. But as I got older and I got a little bit, when you start going through puberty, and then I also went to a public school, which a lot of people do. You go through the school system. You start seeing that you are different than other people. And you may have recognized that quite a bit, maybe earlier on in your childhood, but as you get into middle school, you get into high school especially, particularly in middle school, this is a time where, personally for me, and I know other INFJs that were in a similar situation, they started to retract more and maybe started to have less and less friends because they felt this duality where at school they were a lot more quiet and reserved than they were at home. So for me, and this is kind of hard to believe for certain people that may have gone to school with me growing up, but it was funny. I have two sisters, one of which is my biological sister and the other is my stepsister. And neither of them were in the same grade as me. However, I went to school with both of them. And my stepsister, who was a grade above me, when people would come to her and say that I was quiet or that I was reserved, she would be very surprised because she did not deal with that kind of person when it came to me being at my dad's house. I was very crazy and funny and silly, which again, not saying that I'm like the funniest person ever, but I did do like a lot of little skits, and I had this side of me that was I always wanted to be the leader. I always wanted to do these kind of theatrical things as a child. I loved creativity. I loved playing outdoors. I loved doing all those things. But again, you wouldn't see that at school because I was very reserved. And not that I wasn't reserved at home in some ways, but when I was playing with people like my sisters or my friends or my neighbors, that other side came out. And again, this kind of translates over into when the INFJ gets a little bit older. So let's say the INFJ is getting into high school years and they're starting to become a young adult. this is the time where things are starting to develop more and more as far as functions go. But this is also a very vulnerable time, because I would say right around the age of between 17 to 19, maybe early 20s, this is when you're really starting to develop or really have a way better grasp of your secondary function. So again, extroverted feeling, or just feel like you can express that in the public eye a lot more. So what that looked like for me is, again, I was very quiet at home, but then when people would hang out with me outside of school, I did kind of the weird things that I felt so kind of, I don't know, protective of. Like, I just didn't I wanted to not show that side of me because I was insecure with that. Now, going into college, once I was around the age of 18, 19, and this goes for other INFJs, you start going through this developmental, and this is again for any kind of personality type, but you go through this really huge transformation. And that's why I personally think that time period, college, is some of the best times of people, or university if you're not from the US, is some of the best times for people, because you are developing yourself so immensely. The person I was when I was 18 versus the person I am today, or even the person I was when I graduated from college, is very different. I went from being this like very meek girl that was, pretty emotionally receptive to people. I was known as being very mysterious, very, very quiet. People generally liked me. Like, it wasn't like, I was bullied, but in general, people liked me as a person. I was not seen as abrasive. I didn't talk about people behind their backs. I didn't have like these little gossip circles or something that happened a lot with people at that age. I also was not involved in really having relationships with boys at that time, even though I did have a short relationship with a guy in high school where the most I ever did was hug. So I was very reserved, and that is very indicative, again, of having lead and I. Also, INTJs are this way as well. But that being said, once I went into college, and again, if you're not in the US, university, I blossomed because I told myself, and again, this isn't just an INFJ thing, this is a just person thing in general, but this is how it looks like for INFJs. I started really coming into my second and third and fourth functions, and I'm still not very good with introverted thinking or extroverted sensing. This is something that I'm still developing, and I think I'm pretty good at it, but not extroverted sensing, but regardless, I started really developing those skills of, I really wanted to be a lot more outgoing in my public life and really show that inward person to the outward world. And so in that first year, my freshman year of college, I decided to go and knock on everybody's dorm door in my dorm. And my school, my university at the time, had, I believe, 26 or 27,000 students. When I graduated, they had 35,000 students. So that just shows, and again, I took an extra year to graduate college, which was 5 years. But even in that 4-year period where I would have graduated, we gained, thousands of students, almost 10,000 students. And regardless, we had a decent sized university when I first started, and I made it a mission to try to meet as many people as I could. And so I knocked on people's doors, I introduced myself, I just really tried to get over my ego. And again, not like, oh, I'm so egotistical. No, your ego as in your NI, getting over that hurdle of really just being focused on my NI and really trying to flex those other functions. And again, you don't just have those 4 functions, you have all of the functions. And that is more of a socionics related subject, and that is something that I can speak about in another time. Again, in socionics, I would be an IEI, an intuitive ethical introvert, or an INFP in socionics, but not to really get into it right now. But that being said, you have all 8 functions. However, you do value those 4 functions that they mention in Myers-Briggs. So when I started like meeting people and really kind of pushing myself to go out there, I decided to get involved in different organizations. I decided to join Model United Nations. And this was something that was completely out of my wheelhouse. I was interested in like international things because I loved traveling, and I had been traveling since I was a young child with my family because I have family members that live outside of the US. And so I already was interested in other countries and stuff, but never did I thought that I would get into diplomatic type things or even political things. And I still remember one of my best friends, Rachel, she did Model UN at our high school and she's an INTJ. And at the time, I remember her doing that, but not even really knowing what it was, and nor was I really interested to do it at the time. But basically how I got into Model UN is my friend Patrick, who is an ENTJ, he was in my Mandarin class because at the time that was the language I was studying for my international, at the time I was doing international business, and then I switched to international affairs, but that's another situation. He basically presented it as, would you like to go to Geneva, Switzerland? And again, I personally love traveling, and that was something that kind of hooked me in. But it was literally the best decision I could have ever made, and I would say this is something that I would also advice that I would give for other INFJs or just people in general, to go out and do things that are outside of your comfort zone, to try to make yourself a way more well-rounded person in general. So I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I went to that meeting, and I don't believe there was that many people. I believe there was only like 5 or 6 people total at this meeting. However, I was deathly afraid of public speaking before I went to school or like college or whatever. Before that in high school, and I've said this before in different videos, but I used to shake and cry. I was very, very afraid. And so I ended up having to just introduce myself, but do it in like a Model UN style. So I had to get up in front of the classroom, because we used to practice in classrooms, and introduce myself by saying, thank you, Honorable Chair, fellow delegates, my name is Emily Barnes, and, kind of just saying I'm a freshman, different things like that. However, at that time, I was so deathly afraid that I believe I could not even do it. And so, anyways, my point in saying that, I ended up kind of going into that situation where I decided to give that a chance and join Model UN, and again, it was the best decision. But the reason I did that is, and the reason that this time period is so formative, especially for us INFJs, that kind of 17 to early 20s time period, is this is the time to really go out and explore yourself and really push yourself, because in my opinion, and this comes from other personalities as well, those are some very formative years in really developing who you're going to become as a person in the future, not what other people have told you should be. Again, as a child, you come out as like this perfect being, and you're not perfect, but you're not corrupted by the outside world. You can be exactly who you want to be. And unless you do grow up in like a toxic household, that would be a different situation. But if you grow up in a relatively healthy household, and again, there's such a spectrum of that, but you're able to kind of be who you are as a child, it's not until you get to the age of like 12, 13, 14, right around the age of, or maybe even 11, but right when you're starting to develop and you go to middle school and you start kind of comparing yourself to other people, that kind of starts chipping out. Like you're not really able to truly be yourself. And anyways, going back to college, I think that time period, and not even just college, but that formative period of your time, of your life, where you're in your late teens, early 20s, this is the time where you are really forming those building blocks to really just become the person that you're supposed to be. And so, again, doing Model UN, I was forced, and I did it myself because maybe I'm masochistic, but I wanted to really develop myself and push myself to be the best version of myself that I could be, or at least develop myself in a way that was outside of my comfort zone. So I pushed myself to go to those meetings. And again, I wanted to go abroad. That was probably the first reason, I joined. And we ended up not going to Geneva, Switzerland. We ended up going to Milan, Italy. And again, this was for free. I didn't have to pay anything to join this club. This was just showing up, being consistent, and just performing in the conferences. And again, I was new. I wasn't good. My first conference, I was in General Assembly. And if you're not familiar with Model UN or even just the UN in general, this is basically where all of the member states go. So anybody that's a part of the UN, this is where all of these states will go into a committee and then have to interact with one another. And I believe I was Spain, if I'm not mistaken, for my first conference. But I had a partner, and everyone else in that committee had a partner because it was a larger conference. But basically, you're interacting with all other countries that are in General Assembly. And so there was like 200 something people there that I would have to deliver speeches in front of. And that was so nerve-wracking. And again, I wasn't great, but I pushed myself to do that. And again, when INFJs push themselves to develop as people, and again, not even just, and I'm saying again so many times, sorry, not just people, not just INFJs in general, but anyone. But I am saying from an INFJ's perspective, this is where you're really going to see that transformation happen. And so I guess where I was headed with this video, and kind of the point that I want to say, is this is where ambition starts to develop. Because when we start focusing, we start kind of blossoming into these people that we can be, we find that a lot of our qualities that we've had our whole life, or we valued our whole life, as in, especially NI, leading with introverted intuition, having that tunnel vision, that very focused energy of intuition, and being able to predict things in some capacity, being able to foresee things, to have this very focused nature, and also coupled with that extroverted feeling, which, again, sorry, I'm saying again a lot, but you're really around, you are very good at picking up on the emotions of a room, being able to interact with people. NFs in general, and Myers-Briggs, particularly INFJs, are very good at bringing people together. And they do it in a different way. An ENFJ would do it much differently than an INFJ. INFJ is much more individual. So whereas an ENFJ, and I will say this even in Model UN terms, so this person is not the greatest, but they are, it's a good example of an ENFJ. When I was a sophomore in college, I also did General Assembly, and I had an ENFJ as my partner. And he, unfortunately, is not one of the better ENFJs. And that's actually a video I want to do in general, because I think when ENFJs go bad, they go really bad. But just like other types, but it's just a bit different because, again, when you have this quality of like the NFJ ness, it can be very what's the word? Persuasive, but in that same side of the coin, it can be also manipulative. But I'm not going to get into that portion. Basically, he was an ENFJ, I'm an INFJ, and we came together as partners as Palestine. We represented Palestine in General Assembly. And we ended up getting the best award in that committee. And the reason we did is he was very good at delivering speeches. He was very good at kind of gauging the crowd and his, like, and this is just ENFJs in general. They are good at getting a crowd behind something and getting them interested in something. Whereas for me, my tactic, I was doing the behind the scenes stuff. So I was writing the paper, I was working with other people individually, having smaller groups, and just like doing the diplomacy stuff where he was really doing the speaking part. And then I did the behind the scenes stuff. INFJs are a lot more like INTJs in the sense that we like to do the more behind the scenes type things. But again, NFJs are really good at kind of relating with one another and also just bringing people together. Whereas, again, take a shot anytime I say again. I feel like you would be drunk, so don't do that. But ENFJs are really good at the group, like getting a whole group in one sitting together, whereas INFJs are focused on individuals, and then it's just a difference in the way we bring groups together. I was always more of a leader that would become friends with someone or have a conversation with a one-on-one conversation with someone and then bring them into the group rather than, or like forming a group that way, rather than just having a group of people and being like, come on with me. Whereas ENFJs are really good at that. They can just like bring these group and just like, all right, come on group. But INFJs are like, all right, you, and they individually meet those people and they develop a relationship. So that being said, that dynamic really kind of, it works super well for that situation. And that's why we were able to get to that level, in my opinion, because it wasn't necessarily that we were the most capable, because there's a lot of really intelligent people at those conferences, but we just had such a good dynamic and we were able to bring so many people together. But apart from that, going back to ambition and leadership, again, once we develop this confidence in ourselves, we are able to really reach people on a level that is different than other personalities. Every personality has their strengths. Every personality has their weaknesses. And for INFJs, I was always going back to the Model UN kind of terms and analogies. I was always given the term most likely to become a dictator. And it wasn't because I was like this really loud, outspoken individual in committee. It was because of that, exactly what I just said when I was Palestine. I played other countries in the future. I was Egypt at one point. I've been UAE. I've been Lebanon. I've been South Korea. All different types of countries. And just that type of individual relating to people and grabbing them together rather than just kind of grabbing a group, but just grabbing those people, picking them out, building a team. INFJs, once you have really kind of established that self, you've gotten over your ego, you've developed yourself into some capacity. And again, I have a lot more to do as far as development goes. But I will say that this is something that is a capability for INFJs, and people will notice. People in your real life, and this isn't something that is as seen on YouTube, even though I do feel like maybe some people see this, but in real life, there's a certain energy that INFJs give off, and not everybody's the same, but as far as INFJs and energies, but they do give off a certain energy to people. And although I'm not the loudest person in the group, although I don't necessarily want to be the leader, there are times that I don't really want to take the lead. INFJs tend to take the lead in situations because, and it's the same thing for INTJs, except for it looks a little bit different. But basically, once you've kind of established that in yourself to be a leader, and this doesn't mean you have to lead other people, but even just being a leader in your own life and realizing that ambition doesn't have to look like a TE construct. I think we like to think of ambition as like this extroverted thinking type thing, whereas you can use your FE, you can use your NI to have this ambition and be able to build something that whatever you want in your life. INFJs have this unique ability to really develop themselves and bring themselves to do whatever that is that they want. And especially when you try to develop yourself in a positive way and you study stuff about personal development, which I've been studying stuff about personal development since I was 12 or 13. However, I'm starting to get back into it because there are a lot of times that I knew stuff about personal development that it's not about knowing things, it's about applying things. And when you start applying those concepts that you know and you start maturing as a person, you will find that ambition inside of you. Because in my experience, I don't know of any INFJs that don't have some type of level of ambition because of the way that their stacking is. And again, this doesn't have to be, oh, I want to be the president of the United States, even though that has been a dream in some capacity in the past for me. I don't know if that's going to be a thing that I do in the future, but never know. I know that I want to build my YouTube channel, and this isn't just because I want to be, oh my gosh, I want to have the most subscribers ever or something like that, but I want to build this channel because I want to try to reach more people. And I know by having more people on here, I will be able to reach more people and hopefully even help someone or inspire someone to really just be themselves. And again, this isn't just for INFJs, this is everybody. And it's something that once you develop and you feel empowered, you can really be unstoppable. And there have been times, and I know that other INFJs would be able to relate to this, but there have been times, particularly for me, I would say almost the entirety of I was about to say INFJ, of 2019 going into 2020, I would say for about a year and a half, I kind of let my YouTube channel die in some sense. And I also became stagnated because I stopped posting. I started getting in my head. I started letting other people control my life rather than, and this isn't something like, oh, someone's like literally controlling me. It was just outside influences that I let get in the way of what I wanted. And YouTube is important for me, and it's not, again, about numbers. It's about, I want to impact people. I want to create things. I want to really express myself creatively. And when I really realized that at a certain point, I lost relevancy in this space. I I'm not really someone, maybe I am, I don't know, I just haven't really looked into it. But before, I was one of the MBTI people or like the typology people. But now I feel this sense of freedom because there was a sense of death or kind of reignition of this channel in a way. And this can look like something different, obviously, for other INFJs. Not every INFJ has a YouTube channel that they left on hiatus for a while, and then they feel this sense of resilience coming back. But this could be anything that you want to do in your life, having that ambition to do it, and having that resilience to say, okay, at the end of the day, and this goes for any personality type, you are responsible for your life. It doesn't matter. Again, there are things that happen to you that are outside of your control. There are some shitty things that happen to people, but you are responsible for how you show up in your life. And at a certain point, you can play the victim. You can play, and I'm not saying, I don't want to say that because actually I don't want to victim shame people because I'm not saying like very serious things, but I'm saying like playing the victim in a sense that's like, woe is me, because I know that I've had these situations where nothing happened to me, but I just felt kind of depressed about myself, and I'm like, oh, nothing's going to be good in my life. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about that. Basically, just getting up there, going for it, because everybody deserves something in life. And if you are truly trying to be the best version of yourself, and that looks like something different for everyone, but if you have this goal in your life that you want to achieve, and it's not hurting other people, it's something that you just want to do. And for me, it's like building my YouTube channel or different things like that, having a business where I do some creative endeavors because I love drawing and painting and animation and stuff like that. But just going after that and just being like, who cares what other people think? I can just do it. And having that resilience to start over and not being afraid to fail, because you are going to fail at some point in your life. And failure is not the worst thing. What's worse than failure is by giving up and not going for something. Because you may look like a clown, you may look like a fool, and people may make fun of you, and they may look at you and think, oh, why is this person even trying? That's their prerogative. They can think whatever they want. Again, opinions are none of your business. Other people's opinions are none of your business. And if you are able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and just have that resilience that I know that is inside of an INFJ, and it's inside of other people as well, but it just looks different. You will be able to achieve anything you want in your life. And I don't know what you're going through right now. Like, I don't know everybody that watches my channel or anybody that's going to see this video, but if you are in a hard space, or if you're feeling down, or if you're feeling like, especially as an INFJ, but other personalities applies as well, if you're feeling down in yourself and you're feeling like there's no hope, why should I try? What is going on? There is hope for you, and you can do this. You can do whatever you set out to. There's always going to be limitations. There's always going to be those things that you don't know are going to happen. Believe me, even though I have lived a fairly privileged life, I've also been through some shit. Again, this is a representation of just one of the things that I've been through, and I one day will make a video about it because it's something that's still impacting me, and that's when I got shingles when I was 24. But, everybody's going to go through some shit at some point. And it's just how you raise up. You raise up like a phoenix from the ashes, and you say, I'm going to go by what I know to be true. And I know when you start accepting that about yourself and pulling into that ambition, pulling into that resilience, that is when you are going to feel extremely empowered. And obviously surrounding yourself by positive people, by people that are lifting you up, because I know how it is. I'm not always surrounded by people that are super positive. And I know for me, I do best when I am surrounded by people that are lifting me up. This isn't just an INFJ thing. But we particularly care about what other people think. And it's just getting over that aspect of ourselves and just being into our own and going really truly into it. So this was a very long video. I did not expect this video to be this long. I'm not going to edit it. It's probably going to have some awkward moments in it. But you know what? I just feel like I'm not even sure what I'm going to title this, because I think I had a completely different idea before this video started. This video was obviously not planned, but if you would like to share any kind of story that you have in the comments, I would love to hear it. I love to read comments. I know that not everybody comments. Some people are ghost watchers. I definitely can relate to that. But don't be afraid to reach out to me. I love just hearing about people's situations. And also, if there's any kind of topics you want me to discuss about being an INFJ or even other personality types, let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, please like it. And if you would like to subscribe, please subscribe. Thank you again for watching. Bye.